Hi. So several weeks ago, I taped some videos that I posted to Instagram, and I baked sourdough bread for the first time. And I have since baked sourdough bread 3 weekends in a row since I returned to Chicago. So my starter, Carrie Bradshaw, is alive. I traveled with her in my checked bag back to Chicago. Okay, let's stop for one moment. This is my cat, Riley. Riley is deaf, and Riley likes to be part of anything that's happening in the kitchen. He is, trust me though, I sanitize my kitchen countertop zonkers numbers of times during the day. So you might see Riley roaming around because he thinks this is his home. So I did travel with Carrie back on the flight. She survived. I've gone through several methods of feeding her because I went down the rabbit hole of so many resources of how much to feed, how frequently to feed, whether you just feed the starter right before you're going to bake. Some people recommend that, or if you're going to feed your starter weekly, which is what I have moved to. So this is my starter. And about 3 days before I decide to serve bread, so that would be tomorrow. So Wednesday, I took the starter out. I took 20 grams of starter and I decanted it into this container, which is awesome because it has a lid. And I fed it 100 grams of bread flour and 100 grams of not tap water. I use water from my filtered in the fridge, and 90 degrees, so it's like room temperature. And I keep it in the oven covered for 10 hours with the oven light on because it keeps it nice and warm. My kitchen's very drafty and very cold, so it's a little tough. 10 hours, after 10 hours, so last night around 6, 7 o'clock, I decanted all but 20 grams. I'm cheated, I did about 25, 30 grams of the starter, which I made a little pancake with, which was delicious. And I fed it again. So now this has been sitting overnight in the microwave, actually, just sitting. And it's about 1.5 times the size. And what is really great is the smell. And I don't know if you can capture, but there's bubbles on the top. So this starter is alive and ready to bake some bread. So now I'm getting ready to make the autolyse. And this will go rest in the microwave because I'm not ready to do anything with that. But what I've measured out, and give me 1 second to get my little fancy, I think they call this a Danish dough hook or a Danish, I have to look it up. But it's a fancy bread tool that I actually really like. And so I'm gonna mix my flour together. So what I've measured out is 1,000 grams of flour. And I'm using a combination of bread flour, 700 grams of bread flour. It's a high gluten flour. It's gonna give the bread a really good structure because this sourdough bread has a lot of moisture in it. At least when I make it, it does. And so you need a nice, strong, high gluten flour to really give it that structure so it doesn't just turn into a mush, and you want those nice big pockets and holes and that moisture in the bread, and the flour will help that. And then I mix that. You could do 1,000 grams of bread flour if that's all you wanted to do. Some people use all-purpose flour combination. I add 300 grams of a mixture of whatever else I kind of have. Flour is a really difficult thing to come by right now. So I, for this one, used about 150 grams of spelt flour and 150 grams of whole wheat flour. And I haven't done that combo yet, so we'll see how it works out. But I think it'll give it a nice, I love rye flour, but I can't find rye flour to save my life. My friend texted me, thank you, Sarah Lambeth, and said, oh my gosh, they have it at King Arthur. And the minute I went online, it was gone. So if anyone finds some rye flour, I would love to have some. So I'm just mixing this up so it's combined evenly, okay? And then in my other bowl, I've already measured out 800 grams of the water from my fridge, or if you wanted to use bottled water, obviously not carbonated, but maybe that's not obvious. And you want it to be room temperature, which is about 90 degrees. So I'm a very big rule follower. So I actually check my temperature of my water because, as I said, my kitchen gets cold really, really fast. This was 90 degrees when I started this video, and now it's a little less than that, so I might pop it. No, actually, it's coming up. Yeah, it's about 90 degrees. That's perfect. So we are going to combine this together, right? And I am using one of my favorite bowls, and I am going to combine my flour and my water. And basically, I just want to do this until there's no dry spots. Like, you just want to make sure it's nicely mixed. Okay, so I'm adding my water. All right, and then I'm just going to use my fancy tool to mix these up. Now, after I mix this up and there's no dry spots remaining, it's not going to look like dough. It's going to look sort of like a very rough mixture of flour and water. It's not going to be smooth. It's not going to look like something you could bake. It's going to look like you messed up. It's going to look like, I think it might look to some like, oh my gosh, I screwed this up and I need to add more flour. I need to add more water. Do not lean into that inclination, because ultimately this will get more moisture when we add the starter. It will, as it rises, it's going to improve its elasticity, etc. So this will start to look like dough, right? But not yet. Just have to be patient. That's the other thing I've learned. The one thing I think that this is so awesome to do right now, and the reason I think a lot of people are baking bread, is because it does give you a bit of a sense of control, because you can control your oven temperature. You can make choices about what kind of flour to use. You can decide, for example, I use 800 grams of water, and a lot of recipes have you use less, a lower percentage of water to flour. But in my reading, I learned that things I like in my dough or my bread, which is a nice amount of that moisture, can be achieved with more water. So I go as high as 80%. So I have 1,000 grams of flour, 80% water, which is 800 grams. So, all right, I think we are where I want this to be. All right, and so I'm gonna clean this little paddle off and get all the nice bits. And give me 1 second. Well, I'll just do this with my hands. So you just want to make sure that your bowl is nice and clean, that all your flour is in the bowl. And then we're going to cover this. Riley and I are going to cover this with a damp towel. And we are going to let this sit for about 45 minutes. Again, there's lots of different methods out there. Some say 30. Some methods have you create what they call a leavener to rest alongside, which is a combination of your starter and some more flour. I don't do that method. It's one more step. I haven't tried that. I might try that someday. But right now, this is going to sit for 45 minutes. And then when we come back after 45 minutes, we will add some starter and ultimately some salt. So stay tuned.